Our country has lots of space. Its nature is beautiful and amazingly diverse. Yet, even among this diversity, the spring mountains, steppes, and semi-deserts of Kazakhstan have distinctive beauty. This landscape that often gets burned by the summer sun changes under the warm spring rains. Tulips bloom on the rocky hillsides and cliffs, on the sunlit clearing in the woods, and on endless green steppes. Clear blue sky, larks singing up high, the air filled with scents of spring grasses, and around this emerald greenery, the big flowers with unusually bright and clear color are spread around alone or in large groups, bright yellow, red with golden edges, and fiery red. This vista touches everyone's hearts. It enchants you and stays in your memory forever. Our wild tulips are the most beautiful of all kinds, ornamental grassy plants of Central Asian flora. Based on several criteria, the scientists confirm that it is the south of Kazakhstan and adjacent regions of Central Asia, where the center of species formation, the home of the tulips. Its spacious steppes, its deserts and mountains have maximum species diversion of tulips, 37 kinds. And 50 to 70 years back, the blooming was so massive that the scientists could barely find place for their tents to place. Amazingly, some of our citizens that live in the kingdom of wild tulips think that the home of these beautiful flowers is Holland. However, there has never been a single tulip growing there. How do you think? Which country is home for the tulips? Holland. Yes, Holland. I think so too. Either Iran or Iraq. It's from there, as I recall. Well, people think it's Holland, but actually we have tulips in Kazakhstan. Of course, Holland can be considered as a second home for tulips, as they selected thousands of cultural varieties that grow more than 5 billion bulbs. The Holland tulips can be seen in the cities almost everywhere in the northern hemisphere, but each flower has the blood of our wild tulips. Each of the 37 kinds is unique, beautiful, and unmatched. Especially important is the fact that half of them are endemic or sub-endemic, which means they grow only here in their homeland. The total of 17 kinds is added in the Red Book of Kazakhstan, although each and every wild tulip requires special protection as they are valuable material for selection and obtaining new cultural varieties. The very first one to bloom is the most ancient and the rarest tulip, Regal's tulip. Its gracious buds open in the third decade of March. The sun-heated black rocks carefully warm up at cool nights this precious treasure of Kazakhstan's plant world. Status endemic to the Chu-Ili Mountains, it's a very rare and endangered species. It is added in the Red Book of Kazakhstan. Unfortunately, it has absolutely no protection and does not grow as cultural varieties. In a couple of weeks, the tulips of Albert are blooming like red-hot coals spread around the Rocky Mountain slopes. Its very curly leaves of rare, almost sky blue color are clearly visible on the background of rocks and near the other vegetation. The flowers are different and so bright that even on a cloudy day, they shine on the slopes like gleams of sun. The tulip of Albert is not tall. It is only 20 to 25 centimeters tall, but in combination with a huge bud up to 10 centimeters in diameter and 3 to 4 wide, blue curly leaves, it looks like some finished work of art. Status: endemic of Kazakhstan, rare and endangered species, added to the Red Book of Kazakhstan. It is protected in the Karatau Sanctuary and National Park Altyn-Imel. Most of the Kazakhstani types bloom in the middle of April. Tulip of Kolpakovsky, the child of sun. The color of its flowers is very changing, from bright yellow to orange yellow, with red flame on the petals. It can be found in Chu-Ili Mountains, Jungar and Zailysky Alatau. Sometimes the density of the blooming population is very high, up to 100 flowers per square meter. It grows very well as a cultural variety. Status: very rare, endangered and endemic species. Part of the population is under protection in the Almaty Sanctuary, as well as in the national parks Ili Alatau and Altyn-Imel, added to the Red Book of Kazakhstan. The golden crown of the near Balkhash Lake semi-deserts is formed by tulips of Bem. Shiny, pure gold is the main color of this handsome flower, yet all shades of gold can also be found. This kind is very well adapted to the life in the desert. Its bulb is located quite deep, up to 25 centimeters, and the flower is elevated almost up to 50 centimeters above the hot sand. The stem, below the soil level, is wrapped in dense scales, and the very curly, thick leaves keep their shape very well and store water and never touch the sand. Too bad the high decorative properties of this tulip, its large beautiful flower, long and solid stem, its interesting shape of leaves are not realized in culture. It simply does not survive there. The flowers of Bem's tulip do not produce nectar, but produce large quantities of pollen, an excellent food for bees. Next to it, you can find some quite unusual and very aromatic false biflorous tulip. Its thin stem, usually with 2 leaves, carries several flowers, sometimes up to 5. This tulip belongs to small flowered kind. It very well grows in culture, and the number of flowers there reaches up to 15, and the buds are much larger there. Just imagine it, 1 tulip, 1 bouquet. Another very common small-flowered kind is the tulip of Boissier. In Kazakhstan, it can be found near the Aral area to Lake Alakol. It is up to 30 centimeters tall. This tulip starts to bloom very early. Local people consider it a snowdrop since its closed bud very much looks like Alatau saffron. It looks great in large quantities, a real live carpet. Tulip of Ostrovsky starts to bloom in late April, early May, very close to the largest city in the country, on the slopes of the lower belt of Zylysky Alatau Mountains. The elegance and beauty of the bud plus the delicate aroma is its strong side. In some places it can be found together with the tulip of Kolpakovsky, forming hybrid populations with enormous diversity of color varieties. Such groves are especially beautiful at the Kordai Pass. Ostrovsky tulip is the fastest maturing kind. From stage of a seed, it starts to bloom on the third year. In cultural conditions, the plant's height rises from 30 to 45 centimeters. The bud gets larger. The population of Ostrovsky tulip, same as other kinds, is dropping due to the massive collection of flowers for bouquets, as well as agricultural activity. It is protected in the Almaty Sanctuary and Ili Alatau National Park. Status: very rare, strictly endemic kind with shrinking areal. It forms many interspecies kinds. Valuable genetic fund for selection. The only tulip added to the World Red Book, Rare Plants of the World in 1983, as well as to the Red Book of Kazakhstan. The powerful finishing accord to this enchanting spring symphony is the blooming of the most beautiful, the largest, most colorful, most recognizable flower in the world, our tulip of Grieg's tulip. When you see this perfection of Kazakhstan's flora up to 90 centimeters tall and diameter of open flower up to 35 centimeters, the other cultural species fade away and get less significant. The mankind managed to improve lots of other ornamental plants with the help of selection and hybridization. For instance, the hyacinths, rose, lilac, delphinium, but only the tulips of Kazakhstan remain unreachable. Grieg's tulip can be found in the western part of the Zhytizhol Ridge, in Chu-Ili Mountains, Talas Alatau, Karatau, and on the ridges of western Tian Shan. The flower is large, cup-shaped, with a perfect form intrinsic only to this kind. The color of the flower is amazingly clear, saturated and diverse, but it always has warm tones to it. Lemony yellow, densely yellow, orange, orange-red, fiery red, dark red, often two-colored. Very rarely can you find even white flowers. There are usually 3 to 6 leaves. The upper side of the leaves have brownish-purple spots of different size. Grieg's tulip was described in 1873, and only 5 years later was awarded with a diploma, first-class sort, in Holland. All florists around the world consider it as the king of tulips. Grieg's tulip has a great variety of flower colors. "15 years ago, the Kazakhstani plant breeder and researcher of wild tulips, Viktor Voronin, was lucky to gather seeds of light-colored forms of Grieg's tulips. On his small land plot, he managed to reproduce these rare wild flowers.
Считается, что человек улучшил все растения, которые ввел в культуру.
People think that humans improved all plants that they brought under cultivation, but this case is quite different with the tulips. I think that no one has ever made anything more perfect than Grieg's tulip. Even the kinds that were created with the help of people might meet certain criteria, but they are still less beautiful than Grieg's tulip. and the Grieg's tulip has amazing color. Here, for example, a tulip with a color unusual for wild tulips, but it is pure Grieg's tulip, only Grieg's tulip, nothing else in it. The only possible way to get such tulips is to plant its seeds. Of course, it takes time for them to bloom, but there's no other way, as they don't allow vegetative multiplication. There are very little Grieg's tulips left in the world. As compared to what we had before, now it's 1,000 or even tens of thousand times less. Far away from big cities, far away from developed lands. The places where you can get only by foot, they feed the cattle that eats the tulips. They eat the buds, that's why there's so little seeds in nature, and the tulip's productivity is not high. According to Ivashenko, the tulip grows in nature for around 70 years. 30 to 40 years of them, the Grieg's tulip is blooming. Over this period, it produces around 4,000 to 5,000 seeds. If you consider that the tulip population does not increase in nature, then 4,000 to 5,000 seeds produce only a single plant, and it is very easy to multiply it under cultivation conditions. There's quite a lot of seeds. They bloom on the 4th and 5th year. This is the way to preserve the kind under the threat of complete disappearance. Also, I would like to say about the size of Grieg's tulip. It is well known that the word tulip is derived from the Turkish word turban, the head wrap. But Grieg's tulips in nature can be so large that they look more like Mexican sombreros. The tulips described in literature are said to have the flowers up to 45 centimeters in diameter, and I spoke to some witnesses who have seen flowers up to 45 centimeters. And even the flowers under my cultivation were 36 centimeters in diameter. But now, using the Grieg's tulips by the way of selection and breeding, people managed to obtain over 300 cultivation varieties of tulips. According to the modern classification, they were referred to as special class, Grieg's tulip and its hybrids. But as the scientists noticed, the cultivated varieties still give way to the original wild plant. The problem of Grieg's tulip is in its beauty and complete absence of vegetative multiplication, which means that its bulb does not produce new plants. The plant cut down to its roots has its bulb sentenced for death, and only the most beautiful and largest species get cut. This is how we lose the genetic fund. The protected areas of Aksu-Jabaglinski and Karatau National Parks, Berkara and Red Hill Sanctuaries, the Grieg's tulips feel free and safe. Sometimes their density reaches up to 60 blooming flowers per square meter. We wish it was like this in all steppes and mountains, but there is no way to escape the human impact.